Welcome to The Prisoner's Dilemma, the show where we watch and talk about the 1960s TV show The Prisoner. I'm Brendan, and with me is a spy who's just like me, but from the other side of the Iron Curtain, Matthew.
It's me, Matthew, from the other side of the Iron Curtain.
You're basically dressed exactly like me, but with the palette swapped.
Yep.
And you have a mustache where I do not.
Yep. And it's weird because just with that, it becomes obvious that your costume is really based on Boris from Rocky and Bullwinkle.
I hate Moose and Squirrel. And I want to stop them for reasons.
Yeah, because Russia wants you to, I guess.
Hey, Matthew.
What's up, Brendan?
Hey, why does Boris and Natasha want to stop Moose and Squirrel?
I have no idea.
Why? Boris.
I'm glad we're already on a tangent.
Moose and Squirrel. I'm not even using their real names. I'm just using what Boris calls them, which is Moose and Squirrel.
Oh, man.
Boris's missions range from trying to steal a secret rocket fuel formula to eliminating all television from the United States.
Wow.
Boris, who's thoroughly dedicated to and takes delight in all manners of nefarious deeds, also sometimes engages in his own schemes, such as starting his own organized crime gang, hiring himself out as a professional executioner.
What?
And frequently conspires schemes simply to get rich, such as posing as Hollywood director to bilk Bullwinkle out of his life savings, or usurping Santa Claus by taking advantage of a freak polar drift.
I love to usurp Santa Claus by taking advantage of a freak polar drift.
That doesn't tell me, except in that one instance, why he's always fighting Moose and Squirrel.
Yeah, I guess he just wants their money? I didn't realize that they had money. Anyway, what episode did we watch this week, Brendan?
We watched Chimes of Big Ben, the second episode of the Prisoner TV series, as you would have seen it when you were watching it.
Well,
on TV. And if you have the release order DVDs, probably if you're watching it on streaming services, that is the second episode. And it's weird because this is where everything wraps up. This is where the prisoner finally gets out of the village. He heads home. He admits to everything that he's done, and all the mysteries are solved.
It is weird how they wrap it up like this in the second episode.
It's very peculiar. It's very strange. Tell us how we wind up with. Or hang on. Before we even get into that, can I say something else up here at the top? 10 minutes after talking about Moose and Squirrel for the same period of time, I'm never going to call them Rocky and Bullwinkle from now on. I'm just going to call them Moose and Squirrel. This episode. This episode's good.
Oh, it's very good.
Yeah. It is so good, in fact, that I think they made a huge mistake by moving it up to episode 2.
We'll talk about it. Okay. You said this a bit last time in terms of like, they moved it up, right? Like the script writer for this one, which I have in my notes,
Vincent Tilsley.
Yeah, Vincent Tilsley at least claims that it was always his understanding he was writing the second episode.
Huh.
Yeah.
Interesting. Now, he was kind of brought in as a writer, almost like he wasn't part of the core staff.
Right.
He was brought in by George Markstein.
Yep.
The script editor and creative collaborator on the show. He wrote this episode. He also wrote "Do Not Forsake Me, Oh My Darling,"
Uh-huh.
which, in his words, was pretty rewritten after he did the first draft, but Chimes of Big Ben remains pretty intact. He was given some of the core concepts,
Right.
of like, here's the village, here's Rover, here's number 2, here's all these things.
Mm-hmm.
What would you do with this?
Right.
And sort of went at it. But I think in watching the show, in watching how number 6 conducts himself in the scope of this show, in the amount of plotting that goes on, and the degree to which, like, the extremes that things go to, it is very, very easy to think I've just dropped into a show where I'm 3/4 of the way through the season, if not very close to the end.
Sure. I mean, we should probably just get into it. But in fiction, it has been months, right?
I guess so. It feels that way because, and this, maybe this is worth saving for later, but this definitely feels like, okay, number 6 was not just here. It did not arrive at the village last week. He has been here and he has figured things out.
Right. I'm fairly certain that, like, both number 2 and another prisoner who goes by the pseudonym the General, both of them comment on it being a long time since number 6 arrived.
Might have to bring it up.
Let's check the
It's
tape.
at the very start of the episode. One exciting thing that I discovered over the course of doing the research for this episode: subtitles do not match the dialogue.
Uh-huh.
And in my opinion, I don't make TV. I talk about it on a podcast. But if I were making TV and I were putting together the physical media or the streaming service, I understand there's a lot to consider.
Okay.
But I would have the subtitles match the words on screen. If I were doing it, I'd do it good.
This is why you should be king, Brendan.
Well, I can't so long as this damn iron curtain stands between our peoples in this way.
I found the quote. It's actually from later in the episode. It's Colonel J who says it. After a gap of months. It has been months, confirmed.
When does he say this?
This is we're so out of order now, but this is in the scene where Colonel J, the guy with the white hair and the mustache and stuff, he's like interrogating number 6 in Father Ingay's office.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, okay. You know what? We should probably talk about the episode.
Let's talk about the episode. Let me give the summary and then we can go through it. But
sounds good.
Whatever this looks like in the edit, right? Listeners can just know that, like, we were so excited by this episode. We just were immediately like, let's just get into it. Let's not worry about a summary, which is hopefully a positive sign. Okay, episode summary. It has been months since the events of episode 1, but number 6 shows no signs of breaking, which is met with fascination by a new number 2. Over loudspeaker and radio, we get an announcement that the local council is putting on an arts and crafts competition. Sometime later, a helicopter arrives carrying a sleeping woman we will later know as Nadia, aka number 8. Number 2 invites 6 to his office, where after some banter, where 2 suggests 6 take part in the arts and crafts competition, they watch Nadia awaken in a sequence paralleling 6's own arrival from episode 1, though this time it's number 6 acting as her guide. The next day, Nadia attempts an escape by swimming out to sea. This goes poorly, and she is returned by Rover, or should I say Rovers? Later, 2 summons 6 to the hospital, where he reveals a weird torture/treatment they're using on Nadia, and she reveals her own suicidal tendencies. This seems to galvanize 6, who makes a deal. He'll take part in the arts and crafts competition if number 2 releases Nadia into his care. Number 6 begins work on his entry in the woods, while he and Nadia grow closer, with number 2 watching happily. One night, Nadia reveals the village to be in Lithuania, 30 miles to the Polish border. The day of the competition arrives, and number 6 has submitted what is so clearly a boat, it's ridiculous. With number 2's urging, the judges give 6 the prize, which he in turn uses to purchase another entry, a tapestry of number 2, to act as a sail. The next morning, number 6 and Nadia use their boat to make it to Nadia's contact in Poland, who shoots at Rover to drive it away.
sends a coded message for Six, lends Six his watch, and seals them both in a crate bound for London. After a travel montage, we arrive in a character named Father Inge's office, where a different character, named Colonel J, presumably a former supervisor of Six, immediately questions him, apparently thinking he'd turned traitor after his long absence. Six is nearly about to answer why he resigned to waylay the Colonel's concerns when he realizes the chimes of Big Ben match the time on his Polish watch, despite the time difference. Number 6 soon makes his way outdoors, revealing the office to have been a reconstruction within the village, and the whole thing the plan of the new Number 2. Once again, we end with bars slamming shut over an image of Number 6's face.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's good.
It's good. What an episode.
It's got a lot. It's got a lot that that I think if I was ever to show someone just a single episode of The Prisoner, I think this is pretty high up there. Not merely because it has all the things you want from a Prisoner episode, but because
Liam McKern's in it.
I was going to say because it really does have some good performances in it that just like immediately get you on board with whatever is going on here, no matter how ridiculous it might seem.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think, we should probably just take this from the start. I think there's a lot to talk about in this episode.
Totally.
Even that summary was longer than the first episode summary, which you complained about, which is very funny.
I expressed mild concern. I said that on our side, look, we're two different people. Real ones, no. I'm from Florida. You're from Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
1947, Mikhail Gorbachev put up an enormous wall between our peoples. You live in America, and I live in the magical kingdom of Xanth.
Mm.
And in my world, we would have been more succinct, more sparing with our episode summary. I think your episode summary is perfectly fine.
Oh, thanks.
And I think the audience thinks so as well.
Oh, thanks, audience. Okay, so let's jump in right at...
Hang on. I'm going to leave a space here. If you're listening to this is your time to say out loud to Matthew what a good job you think he did.
Wow. I heard all of those.
Yeah, that's very, you know what? That I think you also could have been more succinct. All right, Matthew, please go ahead.
I was just going to start us off in this first scene where we see Number 6 getting ready. We have the beautiful voice of Fenella Fielding, once again informing us of this local council, and it is your local council, planning an arts and crafts competition. And we see our new Number 2.
The most Isabel she has been so far, which is already pretty Isabel.
It's extremely Isabel coded.
It's like, hey, what's up? The weather is going to be nice for the next 30 days, and we're having an arts and crafts competition.
But it's
what could be more Animal Crossing?
But it's still a bit sinister, right? Like, she makes sure to emphasize it is your local council, right?
Oh, it reads as deeply insincere and satirical to us.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
The vocal performance is incredible. Fenella Fielding kills it every time.
I would never accuse Isabel of being insincere.
I would. So we see...
If people haven't played Animal Crossing, and what's more, if they've never watched Rocky and Bullwinkle...
Yeah.
First of all, they should play Animal Crossing. And second of all, they should watch Rocky and Bullwinkle.
It's true. Stop what you're doing.
I'm gonna leave a blank spot here for you to do both of those things.
So Leo McKern. Let's talk about Leo McKern.
God, he's good.
He's so good. This is the new Number 2. He's an Australian actor who was well known in British screens. He did a lot of British TV stuff. He was in the original Omen. He was in Lady Hawk. He was in a ton of stuff. Quite an actor. He's like an Australian Brian Blessed. He's incredible.
That's a very good comparison. Yeah.
Thank you. And there's this other interesting character in here. We have Christopher Benjamin, who was
is he the little assistant?
Yeah.
To Leo McKern here? Yeah.
Yeah, he was the labor exchange manager last time. They just his number.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
he was number 20 last time. He's number 26 this time. I don't know if that means a promotion or whatever.
Do you think it's the same character, or that it's just the
I
same
have no
actor?
idea. He's changed his hair. It's a different color now. It's like dyed or something. I'm not sure. Uh, but I mean, it honestly doesn't matter. But it is funny to imagine the story from this character's perspective.
Just getting moved around the island to different roles as
Yeah, yeah,
necessary.
yeah. Given different numbered badges. Oh, this week I'm working with number 2. Oh, okay. This time I'm playing with Tinker Toys. Yeah,
Sure.
sure.
I was very surprised it wasn't. I'm gonna have to ask you for his number every time, but the control room.
Oh, the supervisor, number 28.
28. That's it. Yeah, he seems like the perfect guy for number 2 to be, discussing number 6
I don't think
with.
Peter Swanwick, the supervisor, ever leaves the control room. I don't think we ever see him out of there.
Oh, that's it. Maybe he's just too
Yeah,
busy.
I think number 2 goes in there a lot, but doesn't he
Mhm.
doesn't come out. But this conversation is really interesting because number 26, number 2's assistant, is like advocating for stronger measures to be taken against number 6, right? Saying there's ways to make him talk. And number 2 then goes on to talk about no, 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 no. I want him. I want him like his entire soul, right?
He says specifically, which I really liked. I don't want a man of fragments.
Right. Yeah. It's so good.
Yeah. There's I think his very first line here is that he's watching number 6 as number 6 gets up in his room, and he says even the act of putting on his dressing gown is an act of defiance.
It's so
And
good.
it really drives home a little bit of what we were talking about before, where everything that McGoohan as number 6 does is considered and deliberate. Every expression, every action that he does. As an actor, he feels very natural in that he is playing a character that knows he's being watched,
Yeah,
and
for sure.
so is never has his guard down in any way.
Yeah, 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 yeah. That's a great thing to bring up now because there's going to be later bits of us being the camera when number 6 is not there that I want to call out.
Sure.
But the other thing that I really want to underscore in this scene is number 2's like fascination with number 6 here.
Right.
We're going to get a lot of number 2 like modalities, like number 2s who seem to hate number 6, number 2s who don't care about number 6. This guy is obsessed with number 6.
He cannot get enough of this guy and his cool, deliberate. He is constantly saying, "Oh, you're beyond the pale. I'm gonna have to add that to my file. I'm gonna have to update my records about what you're like and what it's like interacting with you." He is treating him as much as someone to banter with, as almost like a naturalist observing an exotic species or some kind. It's
Yeah.
like, wow, look at him do that. Look at him put that speaker in the refrigerator. That's so cool.
You're right. Yeah. That's a great way to put it. Like he's simultaneously a peer and an object for like research and observation. It's really interesting. Also, the fucking lava lamp screensaver is back. I just want to call that out.
Absolutely. It will never leave us, I'm sure.
I think it will leave us at some point, but
if
is
it
funny
does,
that it's
we'll
here.
know that it's a narrative turn of some kind.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. What's the rhetorical meaning of the lava lamp?
Right. Yeah.
Okay. So after getting ready in number 2, talking about how much of a man crush he has on number 6, we now jump to. Oh, actually, sorry. There's one other thing in this scene, right? Which is number 2 calls about somebody arriving.
Yes.
Calls to the supervisor to say, "Hey, when is she going to be here?" Right.
Right.
And that'll be important later. But then,
yeah,
go ahead.
I think so. Just to call it out, if you listen to the last episode, I remarked about like how the first episode has this very difficult task of like introducing us to the entirety of this insane premise, and then also having like an episode of the week, like, and here's what my escape attempt is going to be.
Right.
I think one of the things that right away this episode does a lot better is feed you information that will lead into the following scenes.
Totally.
Yeah.
It really feels.
It's just way better scripted in that way.
Yeah, I feel like the first episode would have really benefited from like the first 2 acts being their own episode, and then the third act being a completely different episode.
Sure.
But this one really benefits from basically just having a really elaborate escape attempt. Speaking of, we now jump over to number 6 playing chess. This is not the admiral he's playing chess with. This is the general.
Mm-hmm.
Number 34.
This guy's great.
He is great. The general...
Talk about a guy that could just be in a Moose and Squirrel cartoon.
Oh, 100%. He's played by Finlay Curry, who's this Scottish actor. He was Balthazar in 1959's Ben-Hur, which I think is fun.
Oh, hell yeah. Yeah. He's the guy he's a wife guy to his horses.
Exactly. And yeah, he does this great job of like basically acting like a foil to number 6 in this episode as someone who's like long given up on escaping the village.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of in here, but it's good.
They have a fair back and forth where number 6 is trying to suss out like who this man was in his previous life, which we gestured at the international conceit of this place,
right?
And we're about to be introduced to someone who's very Soviet coded, but the idea that this old Scottish man could have been working for Stalin and for the KGB instead, it really is like, I don't know, number 6. I think maybe you could put this one together.
I don't know if number 6 really thinks that he might have been like a German officer or a Russian officer so much as like he's trying to break like the social faux pas, right? Like the general is all about, hey, you need to get involved with the community, right? Take on our society's ideals and rules.
Right.
And so he's
like, stuck here and he might as well not be miserable the entire time.
Exactly. And number 6 response to that is to antagonize him by particularly trying to break those rules, right? Delve into somebody's past. So I think it was less to be like, ho, he's a Nazi. I mean, they literally have him wearing like a Commonwealth general hat, right? So like, yeah, he's some sort of Commonwealth general, assumably. But more to antagonize him.
Totally.
Number 2 then shows up again, completely obsessed with number 6, wants to be sitting next to him as much as
my
possible.
My crush is here. What a weird coincidence that my crush is here at this place that I showed up to.
Just the moment that this table became free or this chair became free, I get to sit next to him. It's incredible. And they have a little bit of banter back and forth. This is where we first get the thing you gestured at of the like, oh, you're so funny. I must add that to your file. And this is when we get the helicopter arrival.
Yes, indeed. We see something that we didn't see when number 6 arrived, which is presumably the state that he was in when he first got here. Which is unconscious, really interesting. Just completely like knocked out.
Yeah. Well, we all know a man in a top hat came and sprayed, some sort of noxious gas into this lady's room. It's a lady, by the way. This is Nadia. And made her unconscious for a helicopter ride.
You know what? We completely skipped over the fact that this, as the first non-pilot episode, is the first one that has the intro sequence.
Oh, no, you're so right. It's so important.
Yeah. If you didn't after a last episode, if you're not watching along, I get it. But you should go watch the intro sequence. You should watch it for this episode in particular because it's got Leo McGoohan in it. It's good. Just look up the Prisoner intro. It's good.
If you saw our trailer, we were spoofing exactly that.
Yeah, if you didn't know that, and you haven't played Animal Crossing and you haven't watched Moose and Squirrel, then listen on, because
this is going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah. So we should say, for clarity, in case you've only have listened to or watched these first 2 episodes, this intro will repeat for basically all future episodes, where we'll have the number 2 of the week voice speaking with number 6.
Yeah, it's as much the opening titles. Here is the sequence to let you know what TV episode you're watching each week, as it is their way of introducing, and here's who our guest number 2 is for the week.
Yeah. It's really good. It's a really clever conception. You get like, here's the full pitch of the series in, a few seconds.
Yeah, it's concise. It has the resignation, it has the village, it has Rover. And it has the psychological battle between number 6 and number 2.
Yeah. Should we just read it out?
No.
No. Okay. That's for them. That's for them to figure out.
Listen, I told them, go watch it. Actually, you know what? I'll even give you this. If you don't want to watch it, Wikipedia has a discrete article for opening and closing credits to The Prisoner. You can just go to that.
Yeah, you can.
You can just open that up.
The one thing that I do want to
We can't open that up here on my side of the Iron Curtain.
No.
We don't have Wi-Fi in Xanth.
No, it's too bad. It's too bad that Gorbachev did that to you. The one thing that I do want to call out then is that number 1 is going to be referenced in the intro to every single episode, basically.
Yes.
Which is really interesting, right? Because the words number 1 do not get spoken. Oh, wait, is that true? Nadia might ask. But they basically are not going to get spoken frequently across this series. But that still haunts the show like a specter.
Yeah, and it's interesting because you might not even necessarily think that is something that you need information on unless number 6 calls attention to it, right?
Right.
If there is a number 2, then necessarily there must be a number 1, because if number 2 is acting like the person that is in charge of the village, then he must be answerable to someone. That is the logical conclusion, and it is something that he will not let go of while he is here.
Yeah, it's really fascinating.
And to your point, Nadia doesn't bring it up. Number 6 brings it up.
Right.
Because, of course, that's what he wants to know.
He only wants to know. Okay, so let's jump back into it. So we see Nadia's arrival. There's this really cute exchange where, again, number 2 and number 6, they banter. Like these two in particular.
They go to breakfast.
They
adjourn to breakfast.
It's so good.
The McGoohan and McGoohan have really, really, really good on-screen chemistry.
Yeah, more on their off-screen anti-chemistry later.
I'll gesture it a little bit here, which is that McGoohan, like so many people, says that as soon as he met Patrick McGoohan, he was intimidated / impressed with him, with his energy, with his attitude. He felt like this was going to be a very serious man to be playing off of. Yeah, they come to some very interesting places later on in their moments. We'll just go ahead and say here, this is, I think we gestured at, the 5th episode out of the initial 6 that were created. And Leo McGoohan, because he's the number 2 here, I think, is brought back as the number 2 for the very next episode, which is in release order, the second to last episode.
Yeah.
So we'll see more of him in the role of number 2, unlike every other number 2 that we see across the place.
We'll see a couple number 2s that will be in like 2 episodes. But he's the only one. He's the iconic number 2.
Yeah, more than any other actor, he is the one that winds up being associated with that role because of the stuff that he winds up doing towards the end of the series. We're not going to talk about that here.
No.
But all that is to gesture at, that is Leon McGoohan and Patrick McGoohan have a really a working relationship that's the subject of much debate. It's, you get conflicting reports out of each of them. You get different reports depending on when you speak to them. There's an interview that I watched where McGoohan spoke very, very frankly about some very difficult times.
Yeah.
And then said, love the guy. Can't get enough of him.
Love the guy. Can't get enough of him.
Yeah. One thing at the very start of that interview called out when he and McGoohan went to a pub, I think, to get to know each other at the very beginning of their professional working relationship. And McGoohan said something to the effect of, so you're a funny fucker, aren't you?
But he does play comedy well. It's true.
Yeah, totally.
Anyway, they have this funny little exchange where, like, number 2, number 6 can clearly see this is a new prisoner, supposedly. And number 2 is like, no. She's here for her nerves. She's here to relax. It's a beachside resort.
Exactly.
As you gestured at, they go to breakfast. And there's this little back and forth. And this is the first time that we see number 2 kind of, like, get angry at number 6. And the moment of his anger is really fascinating. So we remember from the very first episode that, like, number 2 knows number 6, the role number 2, knows number 6 is like breakfast order, right?
Right.
And they have this adorable little exchange where like number 2 either forgets or pretends to forget how many sugars that the number 6 takes with his tea, right?
Right.
And they say, no, I don't take any. You know, he looks it up. Sorry, he likes to look it up. Number 6 wouldn't tell him.
Yeah, I might even like drop it in here. It's just so good.
It's so good.
I can never remember. 1 lump or 2?
It's in the file.
Yes, as a matter of fact, yes. But it would save time if you just answered.
Are you running out of time?
Does not take sugar. Frightened of putting on weight?
No, nor of being reduced.
Oh, that's excellent. I am glad you're here. You really are a model.
But I don't run on clockwork.
You will, my dear chap. You will.
And then they have a little bit more of a back and forth, and then number 6 nonchalantly picks up a cube and drops it in.
Oh, it's like several cubes.
Picks up several cubes and drops it.
Yeah. It's incredible. Just like as number 2 is kind of berating him. And we get these beautiful little music like notes as he drops each one in. It's incredible.
It's good. It's really good. One thing that I thought was really interesting here that we haven't seen gestured at all is they're talking once again about this idea of escape,
Right.
This idea of whether or not number 6 will be able to come out,
Right.
or will be able to get out. And number 6 gestures at the idea of getting out and then coming back.
Yes, it's so
which
good.
surprises number 2. And number 6 says, yeah, come back and wipe this place off the face of the earth.
Yeah. This is our first.
This idea that he's going to take whatever tools and resources he has at his disposal and expose and close this place down.
It's so good. So then he drops the 3 cubes in, and then without really any introduction, they're just watching the like security cam footage of number 8's home right within the village. And this is really interesting. Number 8 wakes up and says in English, but in a sort of Eastern European accent, "Thank God I'm home." Which, you know, if we're to take some of the different versions of this show, honestly, would be a very weird thing for a prisoner who's apparently Romanian to say. Or sorry, Lithuanian.
Estonian.
Yeah, Estonian, I'm sorry. The actress is Romanian. The character is Estonian.
Yeah.
Anyway, so then number 2 chortles at the fact that they have a, quote, exact duplicate of her room.
Now, let's talk about this for a moment.
Yeah.
Because this happens, again, in the intro. It happened in Arrival.
Yep.
Where number 6 wakes up in what he thinks, or at least to all appearances, looks like his place in London. Looks out the window, discovers the village is there, and goes out into the village and finds out what's what.
Yeah.
And then it comes back, I think, to the same place. And then it's this minimalist apartment that he has now. The place that he is staying is no longer done up as his living quarters back in England, right?
That's interesting. I don't know if we saw...
Because he does...
Do we see enough of it?
I feel like even
You're right.
the decoration of when he's packing, which we see over and over again, which again is very like big city, small apartment kind of thing where everything is like pretty much next to each other. There's a collection of like new furniture, but also old stuff, which is very typical of that kind of living situation.
No, you're totally right.
Whereas everything in his village apartment is like minimalist stuff. There's a lot of space in between things, very unadorned. And then once again, her apartment is set up as if it were where she was taken in Estonia, presumably. Do we think they are, taking it at face value? Are they decorating their apartments twice?
Yeah.
And then flipping them whenever someone leaves their apartment for the first time?
Oh, man, I don't know. I mean, they clearly, as we'll learn by the end of the episode, are really good at like quickly constructing places that look like exact duplicates.
That's true.
Right?
That's a very good point.
So I could even imagine that they have like, okay, this is the staging area, right? We're going to have them wake up here, and then they're going to go back to like their actual place. But that doesn't work in this case because number 8, we see her exit her unit, which is actually the neighbor of number 6, right?
Right.
Speaking of, we actually get this great thing because there was a prior number 8.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. Number 6 asks if he escaped. Remarks on the fact that there was no funeral. Number 2 says you have to have a body in order to have a
Yeah.
funeral, which suggests that he was lost or obliterated in some way.
Yeah. There's no clarification. They like hit him with like the
Yeah.
Bond evildoer laser or something. He evaporated.
God, I need that for me.
That would fix me.
Yeah. It would relieve so much tension.
Mm.
Just a little bit, I just want to be disintegrated a little bit.
So we get the wake up. I don't think there's a lot more in the wake up. The only other thing I wanted to call out in this scene with number 2 and number 6 is that number 2 tries to make a deal with number 6 about taking part in the arts and crafts competition.
I believe he entreats him to join the arts and crafts competition and then tries to make a deal. Tell me why you resigned and I'll let you go.
Sure. Yes, you're right.
Yeah.
But it is interesting that he, as if they were playing rock, paper, scissors, right? And he's like seeding the idea of making a particular move in number 6's head here.
Sure.
Which I think is really fascinating. There's like the writing is really good. And number 2, Leo McGoohan really sells it as like, this guy is really quite clever.
Yeah, he's able to shift back and forth between like evil bad guy, affable bad guy, and neighborhood chum who's a little bit too excited about local goings on.
Yeah. And I think he has a similar range to like number 6, where like we've seen how Patrick McGoohan kind of like can explode in anger or like be like pacing around like a jungle cat, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in a way, it's a shame that we don't see more of Leo McGoohan in this kind of mode.
Right.
Because it's such a treat to see just the two of them sitting across from each other, basically playing each other, right?
So let's talk about Nadia a little bit.
Yeah.
So Nadia is played by Nadia Gray, who is a Romanian actress who mostly had non-English productions. A thing that's interesting is that like Liam McGoohan was never in Danger Man. Nadia Gray was never in Danger Man, right? Like last episode, everybody who I was introducing was like, yeah, okay, they were in all this spy stuff. These were like people who were like had been in films, right? Romanian films or British films, and like I think you can clearly see the different quality of the acting at play.
Absolutely, you can.
Now Nadia's performance as Nadia here is really interesting because it does have that same thing you were complaining about in episode 1, right? Where like all the ladies get these like overblown, melodramatic, like, oh, I don't know, sort of like things, right?
You're basically watching different genres of TV program when you're seeing a scene of number 6 and Nadia versus a scene of number 6 and number 2. They're just working in very different kinds of registers.
It's true, but I think there's this interesting bit at the end of this sequence that I want to sort of complicate that reading with. But before we get there, we get this great bit where number 6 is acting like the guide to Nadia, the same way that like the waitress and taxi driver and shopkeeper were for him.
Yeah, so basically he's outside coming home when she is leaving to go see number 2, and also sees her when she comes back from that meeting later that evening.
Yep.
And this, I think, is part of why, to me, this episode feels like so much more time has gone on in the TV show.
Totally.
Because already number 6 has figured out how to play the role of being someone in the village, even if he doesn't really mean it.
Yeah. There's this interesting bit, especially in conversation with the earlier conversation with the general, right? Of like, he could be a member of the society. He's like,
sure.
But even when he's like doing the things, right? He does like the be seeing you and stuff. He's doing it so sardonically, right? He's like, you can hear the sarcasm. You can feel it. You can.
Yeah. But as far as this new arrival is concerned, this guy seems to just be another one of these loonies who is like, where am I? In the village. Can I get a car? Local service only. That sort of thing.
And he's like smiling a little bit the whole time. And he does the be seeing you thing as like a couple walks by. It's great. He leads her up to the door, and she does the whole like, "Oh, I'm frightened. Can't you come in with me?" And he says, "No, I'm not going to do that. Bye."
Yeah.
But then we get this really interesting little bit. Once he's out of the frame, he can no longer see her, but the camera can, where she gives this little expression like, "Ooh, I don't know if this is going well."
Right.
And it becomes really clear that, like, where previously the sort of interactions we were getting were uh, somewhat genuine, like number 9 is pretty genuine. Like, this is already pretty clear. This is some kind of performance from Nadia.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Anyway, I think it's really interesting. It's really interesting how this plays with like the audience. Sorry, this meaning this episode plays with the audience suspicions, with number 6's suspicions, and with Nadia's suspicions, like all at once.
Totally. We are always wondering how much each individual person knows and how they are choosing to behave based on that knowledge.
Right. And you already gestured at it, but like that evening when she gets back, also, like, apparently she was in there for hours, which
Right.
did not happen with number 6.
Yeah, to be clear, number 2 invited her for lunch.
Yes. And then it's the evening.
Which, I don't know, maybe he then gave her the tour of the village the same way number 6 got, right?
I think as the audience watching it for the first time, we can assume that happens.
Sure.
But actually, right, like, we would know by the end of the episode there was no need.
Of course.
Also, interestingly, there's a cut scene here when Nadia returns.
Oh.
Yeah, I don't know if you watched this.
I watched a couple of things. I missed this in particular. What are we missing here?
So there's a scene of number 6 trying to use the stars to establish the location of the village using...
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Using what?
This, I don't know how to pronounce this. This tricuterum? Some sort of ancient Greek way of establishing position by the stars. Yeah, it's
Ketrum.
TRIQUETRUM. Sorry, TRIUM.
Trichetrum.
No, sorry, there's not an I in there. I said it wrong twice.
Ptolemy calls it the parallactic instrument, and seems to have used it to determine the zenith distance and parallax of the moon.
Yeah. And it's pretty clear why they would remove this, right? They want to keep it ambiguous in terms of where the village really is. But it is interesting.
I wish that they had made that the focus of a completely different episode.
Sure, that would make sense.
The idea of number 6 using ancient Greek computers to try and escape. I don't make TV, but
two things.
But I would do that.
Okay.
Should we go to the beach?
No. Hold on. I want to talk about this conversation. I think this conversation is important.
Oh, sure.
So they number 6 invites her in, and there's this whole...
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Sorry, I forgot this was here.
Yeah. Number 6 invites her in for a drink, right? It's all non-alcoholic, and he's referring things in terms of their value in work units.
Right.
Which is like the currency in the village, which is great. So he pours her some non-alcoholic drinks. They drink that. They're like sort of standing by the fire. And they have this little back and forth where like number 6 thinks she's Russian. She says, no, I'm Estonian, right? He's trying to like get at her background in a way that we saw with the general.
Right.
But then she apparently reads it as, oh, you're just like number 2. You're working for number 2.
She even calls him, she calls him number 2's assistant.
Yeah, it's so good.
Right, yeah.
And like, it's in this moment that like on a first watch, you kind of like turn, or I think you're expected to turn on Nadia and be like, oh, okay. Like, she's a character who has her own agency, right? She's also trying to figure this thing out, etc.
Right. Yeah, it's her arrival episode.
Exactly. And I think that's so cool to have this like, immediately after episode 1, here's this foil of this other version of number 6. It's great.
Now, here's an idea.
Yeah, what's up?
We gestured before at the way number 6 is acting in front of her. Seems like all of the other people in the village.
Sure.
Is everyone else in the village just acting that way because they also don't trust anyone else?
I mean, we'll have other episodes on this more explicitly later, right? About how in the village, it's unclear how many people are prisoners and how many people are like village staff, basically. Right. And the different roles those play. And it's sort of, it's a bit like a hidden information game. It's like everybody's playing Mafia and Werewolf all the time. Right.
Oh, sure.
Nobody quite knows who to trust and who can be trusted and so on and so forth.
The idea of a game of werewolf where you don't know who's a player and who's a game facilitator sounds excruciating.
I don't know. I'm sure somebody even now is working on a tabletop game of that.
Totally.
Okay, so
Hey,
yeah.
if you make that, let us know.
Yeah, we'll play it. Okay, now we can go to the beach.
Ah.
Oh, it's so relaxing. The Welsh beachside in autumn.
You know what? You can. I think if I were number 6 and I saw this beach, I think there are a few degrees of latitude that I might be able to eliminate from the scope of possibility.
Yeah, this is not a tropical beach, right?
It is not.
This is a like little alcove on some sort of like cold Welsh coastline.
There's like 1 bucket's worth of sand.
It's awesome.
It's so good. I can't wait to go here to take in the seaside air for my vapors.
Mm-hmm. And we have another incredibly fascinating conversation between number 6 and number 2 here.
Yes, indeed.
I don't know exactly how to read this one, but number 6 says, "Hey, you're a prisoner too," and number 2 agrees with him.
I have it here.
Yeah, please.
Number 2 says, "I'm definitely an optimist.
Mm-hmm.
That's why it doesn't matter who number 1 is.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter which side runs the village."
Mm-hmm.
To which 6 says it's run by one side or the other. Number 2 continues, "But both sides are becoming identical.
Mm-hmm.
What has been created is an international community, a blueprint for world order. When both sides facing each other realize that they are looking into a mirror, they'll see that this is the pattern for the future." And number 6 asks, "The whole earth as the village?" Number 2 says, "That is my hope."
And the way he delivers it, it's like he really believes this.
It is impossible to know whether or not he's telling the truth.
Yeah, of
here
course not.
But it really seems like this is what he thinks.
Yeah. And in a way, if that is what he thinks, he's right. He won. Right?
Yeah. I mean, again, this is 1967.
This is 1967.
Sci-fi and political thrillers and stuff like that had been trading in sort of globalist conspiracies for a long time, but
a version,
check it out.
Yeah, but a version of this that says even 1984 still assumes that like we're gonna have a great enemies that at the gates, right?
Sure.
But the version of the village version of the world, the villagified version of the world, was kind of like the 1990s, where they're like,
say more.
They're projecting this, this world with no major wars. Now we all know that we're, still proxy wars happening, right? But like the great powers at the time were supposedly at peace, right? And where, yes, they became like a mirror, right? Russia became capitalist. Russia became like the United States. They had elections, right? They became one and the same. And there was this like, police state of like everyone is being observed all the time, right?
Yeah.
And that's crazy. That's wild.
The tail end of this is not as dramatic, but it does again remind you of just when this was taking place. He asks at the end to number 6, he had just said, "That is my hope. What is yours?" And number 6 says, "I'd like to be the first man on the moon."
Yeah, that's great.
Neil Armstrong wouldn't walk on the moon for another 2 years.
Yeah, it's really good.
Yep.
Okay.
Would you go to the moon?
No.
Really?
No, I don't think so.
I'd go to the moon.
Okay. What for?
I don't know.
Get some Wallace and Gromit cheese. Be chased around by a robot.
I mean, probably get some good pictures for Instagram while I'm up there.
Yeah. So I'm not on Instagram. That's the difference between us.
Yeah, you don't have Instagram on your side of the Iron Curtain.
Yep, correct.
But I do.
Yeah, you do. It's beautiful.
Nadia goes for a swim.
Nadia goes for a swim and keeps swimming.
She's first. Okay. Again, we're dealing with a different era of television.
Right.
But at some point in her file, maybe after this scene, it's gestured that she's like an Olympic level swimmer or something like that.
Directly after this. The cut is to him looking at her file going, bronze medal Olympic swimmer.
Yeah. The scene makes me wonder if this isn't the first time she's ever swam in her entire life. She's so bad at it. It's like she's never even heard of it, and someone had to like mime, like, yeah, just move your arms like this in the water.
What's some sort of secret Estonian swimming technique, Brendan?
Yeah,
You don't understand.
maybe. Isabel has popped on the Animal Crossing announcement and has said, "Swimming has been unlocked for all residents. Try it out sometime."
It's looking at the episode as a whole, this bit is kind of ridiculous. Like, who is this for?
Well, it's about to get worse.
I mean, but it's like number 6, like they make very clear, they make sure that number 6, like part of this conversation that number 2 is having, as we learn later, or we can assume from later, is about making sure that number 6 sees Nadia go, right?
Right.
And like that he's being held there so that when she comes back, he's there to meet her, right?
Right. So to be clear, they're at the beach. Lots of other people are at the beach just having a beach day. She is there in a swimsuit. She decides to go for a swim.
Yes.
And then she keeps swimming.
Yes.
She like leaves the shore and seems to try and depart the village by swimming away from it.
Yeah. There's, number 2, when after he looks up her file, immediately calls our supervisor again and says like, hey, what's up? And the new supervisor mentions like, okay, we have her on visual for now, but eventually we will lose her on visual. So there's this sense of like, okay, our security net does have a limit, which is interesting.
Right. Yeah.
And the fact that they even bother having this conversation makes me think that the supervisor, number 28, is not in on it.
Maybe not. Yeah. They gesture at the posts that I think we saw gestured at when number 6 tried to get a getaway. So they have a security network of some kind.
Yes.
I would believe that maybe the supervisor knows about it, but the rest of the people don't.
That's very possible.
Why bother?
Yeah. So this is like very much security theater, right?
Right. They bring her back in. How do they do that?
Well, they call on Rover.
And
we get this great shot of like a bubble under the ocean, which then like transforms into Rover.
Right. I think that is good. I think that I think we see in the intro, as a matter of fact. This idea that this is how they deploy Rover is pretty cool.
And then we get these great shots. I think they're great shots of Rover like bouncing along the surface of the water.
That part is good. Yeah, I think it like chasing after her with these bizarre roars across the surface are pretty good.
Yeah, it's very surreal. And then it catches her, and this is when it gets kind of silly.
So the original vision again of Rover was like this UFO submersible thing that could go anywhere and do anything.
Right.
And the way that it subdued you was that it hypnotized you.
That makes sense.
And in the first episode, we saw it smother someone. We saw it pummel someone.
Yeah.
Here it seems to be mesmerizing. Like it is emitting something. It is not like drowning her because she's in the surface. It's sitting like over top of her. Yeah. But it seems to be like bombarding her with hypno rays or something.
Well, it's interesting because when we come back, she is under the water briefly. So, and there's this weird effect. It's very 1960s. It's weird swirly water effect over it. So it is very unclear what the heck is happening here, for sure.
Yeah.
And we even see for a moment as like 2 other rovers emerge. If you like,
it gets worse.
Yeah, it's so bizarre. And then
it's so the original idea here. The script has it like engulfing her and like taking her back, and that's how she is transported back. But instead, I guess they felt like they needed to have it like tow her. But if it's towing her in the water, then it's just towing her by the shoulders. And so they added 2 more mini rovers to the back of it in order to support her feet.
Yeah.
And so it looks like it's this very unflattering vision of Rover as like a unneutered dog, like towing her along. I think you can sort of see her legs kicking.
I mean, to me, it looks more like the Mickey Mouse. right?
Oh, sure.
It's like the
Yeah.
big ball and then two smaller balls, right?
Yeah, it's a very unflattering hidden Mickey.
Yeah.
This is globalization at work.
Well, actually, it's really interesting. We didn't mention last time, but these first two episodes, I don't know if all of them are, but the first two episodes are directed by the same guy, Don Chaffee, who's perhaps best known these days for 1963's Jason and the Argonauts, the one with the great claymation.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And then also Pete's Dragon for Disney.
Oh.
Yeah.
Huh.
It's one of those like pre Roger Rabbit, before they'd really figured it out things, where they had like a
Yeah, it's like
character.
a cartoon over
Yeah.
top of live action if you've never seen it.
Yeah, but I think it's really interesting knowing that this is a guy who like has made these like fantastical films, right? So is used to like used to shooting things with sort of like a otherworldly or dream logic, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Hey, did you see what his last film was?
Something about a robot dog?
Yeah, it's called Chomps. And it's about a robot dog.
That's great. We love Chomps here. I've never seen it.
I don't know. I don't know if anyone loves Chomps, if I'm being honest.
We can neither confirm nor deny Chomps.
Yeah. I will talk at length about Moose and Squirrel. I will not talk about Chomps.
Thank God. So we get the Rovers again, sort of like pathetically dragging her onto the beach.
Yep.
Just for number 6 to see her, and then immediately some medical people rush up to grab her.
Yeah. Wherever number 6 is, they're going to drag Nadia so that he's privy to her story.
Yes, exactly. And then we get this hospital sequence.
Number 2 invites number 6 to the hospital. And says, "Listen, I really need your help. You know this lady better than anyone."
So funny. We've had like 2 conversations.
2 extremely hostile conversations. He's like, Bro, I cannot get through to her. I need your help, please.
I need your insights. You're so smart. It's so funny.
Do you know like what her favorite? Like, I don't know. It's doing a lot of work.
But I mean, Leo McGoohan, bless his soul, he sells it.
He does. He really does.
It doesn't matter the material. McGoohan's got you.
They are basically like asking her in an isolated room the same questions over and over again. They're describing her swim as a suicide attempt rather than escape attempt.
Yeah.
Which again, I have to think, given what happens, which seems to be that she's in a room with like an electrified floor.
We have to explain the floor. It's the most ridiculous thing. So
Colonel, the floor is electrified.
So number 2 walks number 6 through it. There's an electrical current going through the floor.
Right.
It's on for 4 seconds, off for 4 seconds. They've timed it out so there's enough time to get from where they've put her to the door. And they've also given her, for no apparent reason, a bowl of water. So the idea is that she can use the bowl of water, flick it onto the ground to figure out the timing of the electrical stuff, the electrical current, and then she can make her way to the door and escape. So it's like
while a robot voice is asking her why she committed suicide.
I think it's the supervisor's voice.
It might be, yeah. But it's through like an oscilloscope, and there's a lot of Buck Rogers science on it. Stuff here, yeah.
Totally. Lots of sensors and dials and stuff like that. But the idea, at least as number 2 gestures at, is like this is some sort of treatment about like if she just goes, then she's free to go, right?
Maybe this is him continuing to play on the she's here for her own treatment.
Maybe.
I don't know.
The other thing here, right, is assumably you could imagine in 1960s logic, like take your mind back to that time. Yeah. And imagine that like he could be thinking, if she was a real prisoner, if she breaks here, like if she doesn't run for it, then we have her, right? Because she made the choice. She could have left, and she chose to stay and answer the questions instead, right? So you can imagine this is like, the guy number 2's assistant gesturing at. These are the kind of more intense questioning methods they could use.
Yeah, we see just a little while later the therapy room that we've seen previously with like people in the sauna from hell or something like that.
The purple light. There's a little, again, like children's music, do 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 sort of thing.
They're moving their feet in synchronization.
It
It's very
rules.
strange. Yeah, it's great.
Anyway, we see Nadia figure it out.
Right.
It's so nice that it's just a weird coincidence that she happened to figure it out while number 6 could
That's
see.
good.
Don't you think?
Yeah. I mean, it suggests that maybe she's like a covert operative that has her own agency and has the skills necessary to survive in the Cold War.
Yeah, it does seem that way.
Yeah.
Anyway, she makes it to the door, and then we see that she could open it, and instead she crumples to her knees and starts yelling to kill her.
Mhm.
Right? Kill me, right?
Yeah, it's not good.
It's not great. But this seems to be the thing that like galvanizes number 6.
It is.
In all of the previous interactions, he had kept this sort of suspicion, right?
Right.
We get this great close-up. We sort of skip past it. We get this great close-up of him on the beach looking down at her and like seemingly thinking like, hold on, I thought that this was a very suspicious lady, but she just tried to escape and nearly died. Maybe she's not suspicious.
Right.
Right? And then here he's like, okay, I'm all in on Nadia.
Yeah. This is more TV and rather than like presentation for number 6's benefit, I think. But despite having tried to swim for her life and nearly dying, and now being in the interrogation chamber, she does have perfect eyeshadow and hair.
I know, it's ridiculous.
It's pretty silly.
I hate every time a show does this. But you know, we'll at the end of the episode, we should talk about like what these 2 episodes tell us about what the prisoner thinks about women.
Sure. Yeah.
Anyway, so number 6 proposes a deal.
Yes, indeed. What is that deal?
Well, it's interesting because he just proposed the idea of a deal first, right? And
Yes.
number 2 seems surprised. He's like, "Is that really all it took?
Yeah.
Like, all I had to do was torture a lady? I could have done that whenever."
Uh-huh.
And number 6
We
clarifies.
got those all over the place.
We've got so many ladies. And number 6 clarifies, no, like I'm not, going to give you everything. What I'm going to do here is I will take part in the arts and crafts competition. I will, do a better job of trying to be involved in the village if you release Nadia into my care.
Number 2 loves this.
Number 2 super duper loves this.
Not least because it's such an audacious offer. This idea that like, I'm not going to tell you anything, but I will play nice.
Yeah.
And isn't that good enough for you? For Leo McKern's number 2, the answer is yes. That's plenty for him.
Yeah, he loves this guy.
Yeah.
I really want to bring up just this one line. I wrote it down. Number 2 says to number 6, "Is that an order, number 6?"
Yes.
Which is really interesting.
It is.
Especially with number 2 earlier suggesting he's a prisoner too.
Uh-huh.
And you could imagine that number 2, Liam McKern's number 2, having been a prisoner previously, is still playing the game. He could still imagine at some level, number 6 could be a test for him. That number 6 is a member of staff. That he's higher up.
Yes.
And that he's testing him.
That's pretty good.
It's so interesting. We can get to it more later, but like there's so many levels in this episode of like who's fooling who at what point.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, you could also read it as like, oh, you're ordering me around? Ha ha ha.
He has like a little portable recording device that is just like a little gray rectangle, but that is like anticipates like personal tape players and iPhones and such.
Yeah.
That's delightful. Makes further notes about number 6's egomania and sense of self-importance.
Yes.
This idea that him playing nice is a good enough thing to offer in trade. As much as he loves it, he is like, this guy's a little bit more audacious than I thought, which I think is, good television, but it also plays into what I have gestured at before of like, this is as much about Patrick McGoohan as it is about number 6.
Totally.
Like the idea that I'm going to go do these things and that should be good enough for you is as much what he is saying behind the camera as is what he is saying in front of the camera.
Totally.
Of which we'll have more to say anon.
Yeah. I think we can do these next bits pretty fast because they're not actually all that important.
I think so.
There's a bit of Nadia and number 6 getting.
Okay, no, wait.
Yeah.
No, finish what you're saying, and then I'm gonna.
I mean, do you want to talk about the
ask the
breakfast
question.
sequence?
Okay. It's simply. I don't want to talk about it, but I do want to say, as much as I love this episode,
Yeah.
it feels like there's a scene missing here.
Okay, so there is true. I don't know if you looked at this. The original script called for a lot more romance scenes between number 6 and Nadia.
Oh. Because to be clear, the scene is they're both in number 6's place in like early morning clothes, getting ready for breakfast, as if she has spent the night.
Right. And who knows, there's a way you could read this as if, they've been intimate, but you could also read this as just like he took the couch, she was in the bed, to feel safe, right?
Sure. And
or something.
And that makes sense, but given how they both spoke out loud to one another previously, it's like, all right, how on earth did you get here? Because why would she trust him to be the one to take care of her after all this? She thinks he's part of the system.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's not actually clear how much time has passed.
Exactly. I think that is really what gets me about this, because, in a couple of scenes, they'll talk a little bit more in the way that I would like them to have here, or previous to this.
Yeah, you could imagine this could be the next day, them just getting breakfast together.
Sure.
Right? It could be weeks have passed.
Mm-hmm.
Probably not that long because we know the competition was coming up.
Right.
Anyway.
Let's move through the things more quickly, as you suggested.
Yeah. I mean, number 2 is really happy that they're getting closer together, right? There's a feeling of this going to plan for number 2's side of things. We get number 2 checking in on them. Number 6 says he's going to go, work on his entry.
They go to the woods.
We see number 6 doing a lot of woodworking with handmade tools, with a lot of stock photography, stock video interspersed. Number 2 comes and visits, right? He says, "Oh, these tools are slightly out of the bounds of what we would typically allow, but I'm so in love with you."
Yeah, they don't allow axes and swords.
Weird.
So weird. So he has made his own Minecraft axes by like lashing sharpened stones to sticks and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's really good, and Minecraft wouldn't even be invented for another few years.
God bless you, Hatsune Miku.
Thank you.
Wherever you are.
Wherever you are now. It's been so many years. Come back to us, Hatsune.
Earth needs you now more than ever.
Miku could fix us.
Yeah.
Anyway.
He's making a boat. He keeps saying that it's art. It's very clearly a boat.
We should come back to it being a boat when we actually get to the competition.
Sure.
The important thing in this sequence is the quote-unquote romance scene.
Right.
So one night, Nadia comes to his door, says, is it safe for us to talk? He comes and gets the speaker. It's no longer being held in the fridge. He puts it on the little table by his door, and they sort of mime flirting. He plays with her hair while she reveals the secret truth.
They're putting on a show for the surveillance cameras.
Yes.
And exchanging secret information.
Well, really, it's just him needling it out of her, right?
Right.
Because she says she knows where it is, the village. He says, "How do you know?" She says that she saw it on some documents, right? Some documents she wasn't supposed to see, assumably.
From her previous life.
Yes, as maybe a spy, but also maybe like a, just sort of...
like a functionary
or something. I mean, she mentions earlier, number 6, kind of in a racist way, says, "You speak very good English." And she says, "Oh, it was part of my job," right? So she says that it's in Lithuania, and they do some like quick calculations in terms of like where they could make to from there, right? They mentioned
she says they're very close to the Polish border,
right?
And that she supposedly has contacts there that will help them get to England,
right? Because he originally is like, okay, it's gonna be like 300 miles to like the closest ally, right?
Right.
But she says, no. If we can make it 30 miles, I can get us the rest of the way,
right?
Which is interesting, right? So all of this, like,
it is.
This boat building is supposedly to get them 30 miles, but he didn't even know that, right? When he started the boat.
Yeah, exactly. He's building it for parts unknown.
Right.
she makes it clear that, oh, no, there's a village, there's people there that will help
Right.
us. We just need to get that far.
Yeah. The romance in this scene is a play for number 2. And for the audience, it is so obviously that it's being faked. It's crazy.
It's the chastest flirtation you have ever seen in your life.
Yes.
Yeah. What do you talk a little bit about why Patrick McGoohan behaved this way?
Well, as we learned, Patrick McGoohan is very religious, right? We mentioned this in the last episode.
He loves Jesus.
He loves his wife and
he
Jesus.
loves his wife.
And because of that, he hates
Yeah.
all other women. And
I don't know if he hates them, but he certainly treats them as if he hates them. And that might be the same
more
thing.
on that later.
So, yeah, even as far back as Danger Man, he had a very, very strict rule about, I'm going to be a spy, but I have very particular ideas about what it means to be a spy on television.
Right.
This is from a interview, basically him dictating to a writer called Joan Reeder in a October issue of Woman magazine from 1965. This is just as Danger Man was about to come out, or just after it had come out, I think. Actually, I think it must have been later because he talks about how successful it was.
Sure.
So, a good television series to be made at Elstree was just what I needed. That's what would become Danger Man. But there was one snag. I didn't like the scripts. I thought there was too much emphasis on sex and violence. My reasons were simple. While you can select what sort of film you or your children will go see when you go to the cinema, you have no such control of choice over television programs. They come right into your home. When these programs are unduly concerned with violence, the ugly noises, the impact of brutality, are all intensified in realism because they're happening in your own living room. As they go into millions of homes each night, you can never guarantee that elderly people or children will not see them and be both frightened and offended. Since I hold these views strongly as an individual and as a parent, I didn't see how, as an actor, I could contribute to the very things to which I objected. When we started the series, I refused to shoot a scene where I had to wrestle with a blonde on a bed. Before I could reach a wall safe, I had to rob. I also preferred not to use a gun.
Right.
And then there's some more a little bit later where he's convincing an executive to keep this stuff out, not because of moralistic ideas about what should be on television and who should get to see it and who has the choice in the matter. But he's talking a little bit more in terms of John Drake is not a James Bond.
Right.
He is a workaday spy. He is like the real spies in the real world doing this sort of thing. And he's not wasting his time with romance or using guns in these situations that don't call for it.
Right. Yeah, it's really interesting how, we were mentioning Disney earlier this episode.
Right.
It's really interesting how both Disney and McGoohan end up at the same sort of like family-friendly sort of vibe in two completely different routes.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. There's something to be considered for the idea of like, okay, there were 4 television channels in the United Kingdom at the time. I think there were more in the United States, but certainly they didn't have the plethora of choice that they have now. And so I can see being a lot more concerned with, okay, well, if you're going to turn on the TV, there's a 25% chance you're going to see whatever spy shooting a gun or something like that. I can understand being a little bit more concerned about like, am I going to participate in spreading this sort of thing? But on the other hand, you can see a very, very conservative, very, very, moralizing idea of like, well, this is what this kind of person is going to be like, and this is the kind of person I'm interested in portraying.
Right.
And that's why I'm going to do these things. And, to his credit, Danger Man was the biggest show on TV for a very long time. So I have not yet watched it. Certainly it seems like, as someone who creates things, I am a big fan of constraints. Constraints can lead you to very interesting places.
Totally.
And deciding, okay, we're making a spy show that, we're doing spies. Everyone is chasing that James Bond luster, right?
Right.
And deciding, okay, I'm going to do a spy show, but no guns and no romancing the ladies one way or the other, can lead you to some interesting choices about like, okay, well, how does he get one over on the bad guys this week?
Yeah.
That would lead you, I would hope, to some more interesting kind of decision making about how he goes about doing his job.
Yeah. And I have watched some Danger Man. I think it does unfortunately, it's a product of its time in terms of like the racism and sexism.
Mhm.
But there's lots of little clever ways that Drake solves problems that are still a lot of fun to watch.
Sure.
Getting back to it, there's this this cute little interaction to end out this scene where Nadia says that what she most wants to hear are the chimes of Big Bill.
Love that. Love that. Big Bill.
It's pretty funny. And number 6 corrects her. It's Big Ben, and she says, "I'll never call you anything else." As
Right.
misunderstanding. It's good. It's a clever little writing interaction.
It is. It's not bad. I think of the things that this actress does, she manages to pull that off pretty darn well.
Yeah, and it is a really tough bit. I think we'll get to it by the end, but like she gets increasingly naturalistic as she goes along with her
Yes, I
portrayal.
would absolutely agree with that.
And I
Um,
go ahead.
I was going to say, I think part of that is her as the character softening to number 6 as like, this is someone that I can trust. This is someone that I'm relying on in order to escape this place.
I think we're supposed to read it that way, but you can also read it with full knowledge of the episode as her just getting into the role more.
Sure.
Uh,
Yeah, that's a very good point.
which I think is really interesting, especially with that little like moment of hesitation we see at number 2's door, right?
Yeah.
Like, this is a very weird thing for assumably this super spy lady to be asked to do. Play a super spy under these constraints, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. I think them calling one another Nadia and Big Ben
Mhm.
that is a good play against your number 6 and your number 8.
Totally.
Them having these names for one another that are not the numbers. That's good.
It is very good. So now I think we get to the arts and crafts exhibition.
Oh my god.
It is so good.
Tell me about this art.
It's incredible. Well, first of all, this is our first time seeing inside the community center.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. They specifically bring number 6 in because they say, "Oh, the committee needs you to explain it a little bit."
Well, yeah. So totally. I want to quickly just talk about this a little bit. So the community center is apparently like in a church, which is great.
Oh, I didn't notice this.
Yeah, it's the the big step double doorways of like a Catholic or Anglican church.
Mhm.
And which is really interesting because the hospital is supposedly in a castle, if you remember from episode 1.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
So it's really interesting how they like take in this, fantastical or sort of historic iconography and they're like repurposing it.
Mhm.
Because inside it is an incredible space. We'll be back here a lot. It has the same kinds of like 1960s colors and shapes, minimalism, geometry of some of the other official spaces. But
Yeah.
but this one's a community center, right? So it has this big open space in the middle, these really interesting, colorful hallways. Everybody's going in with their colorful outfits. We should note that, like, very clearly, this was shot months after the first one. It is very clearly autumn. The trees have changed colors,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
They've lost a whole bunch of their leaves, right? We can see everybody's wearing sweaters now, which they weren't before.
Right.
It makes it even funnier that they went to the beach. But anyway,
Yeah, this place is this is one of the first spaces in the village where I thought this would be cool to come hang out in.
Oh,
It's
totally.
very, very spacious and it's very, very interesting to like look around and mill about inside.
yeah. Or like have a Hitman level in.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a really cool space. Okay, so the art,
Right. There's art everywhere in
and
this
it's
place.
all number 2.
It's all of number 2, specifically Leo McGoohan's number
Yes.
2.
So clearly, like the local council said, okay, the theme is number 2.
Or if they did, did they?
Well, so they ask where number 2 is for number 6's art. So I think that was
Sure, they
a
do.
requirement or a request or something.
See, I thought it was much more indoctrination.
It could be.
That it was like, oh, of course, that's what I'm going to make. Again, in a 1984 kind of way.
Our
of,
glorious
like,
leader.
there is nothing to make art of that is not our glorious
Totally.
leader.
Yeah, that's a very fair read. I given that the judges ask, it might have been part of the criteria.
It might have
and I
been,
think that
yes.
makes the final reveal of number 6 winning even funnier. We run into the general again very briefly.
It's not super important.
He's made a chess set. The king piece is in the shape
Of
of number
course.
2.
And we have all of this like paintings and tapestries and all these different things, all of number 2's face.
An incredible variety
Yeah.
of things. Like the number of actual pieces of art that they have made in renditions of Leo
Mhm.
McGoohan is really, really incredible. It's astonishing.
Yeah.
To look
Hold
at.
on, I'm gonna look this up. I'm bringing up my copy of the official Prisoner Companion. Okay, Bernard
Uh-huh.
Williams. I don't know anything about this person, but they were the production manager, and Jack Shampin was the art director, and they really killed it. Like the amount of work for what is basically one scene of this episode is wild. Anyway, you said earlier they number 2 grabs number 6 and says the judges are loving your piece, but they have some questions.
What is this boat?
So, basically, what number 6 has done is he's taken like the body of a tiny sailboat, propped it up so it's like as tall as a person, a little bit taller than a person.
It's like a dinghy that happens to have room for a sail.
There's some,
but no sail. No.
Yeah, there's some holes cut in it into the base.
Yep.
More on those holes later. And then he's taken the mast and like, I forget what they call it, but like the beam that goes across the mast to like hold the sail. He just put that in front of it.
The boom.
And he's like, that's my art piece.
It means freedom.
Yes.
It's titled Escape.
It's titled Escape. He thinks they're so stupid.
Yeah. They are so
They're
stupid.
not. This was their plan.
No.
That's the whole...
No, you don't think the art judges are in on it, do you?
The judges are not in on it, but number 2 is so clearly leading them.
Sure, that's a good point. I hadn't thought about that.
Number 2 is reacting to everything number 6 says. It's the most clever thing he's ever heard in his life. And then he even says to the judges, oh, no, but you mustn't let me sway you.
Yes, I'm not in charge here. You must make the final decision.
Yeah, which is very similar to what, our unnamed voice of the announcer, Isabel, was saying earlier about it's your local council.
That's right. That's right.
Really quick, let me go through these judges. So we have 3 judges here. We have a tall judge. That tall judge is number 22. His name is... Oh, I don't have it here. Oh, that's annoying. Hold on. I had it copied down, and I think I cut it. I have it here, though, separately. Here we go. He is John Maxim. So
John Maxim.
John Maxim. He's really tall.
And that's the NPC name list, absolutely.
And he had been in like Doctor Who a couple times as like monsters because he's just like a tall actor, right?
I thought you meant his character name was Monsters.
No. He was he was Frankenstein Monsters once. He was a Cyberman another time.
A Cyberman?
Yeah, I know you haven't watched any Doctor Who,
I don't know,
but they're like a classic. The Cybermen are like...
Is that like a Hatsune Miku kind of guy?
If only. They're much more like body horror. Like this planet where a whole bunch of humans had to slowly turn themselves into robots because of bad conditions. And the original incarnation of them is so terrifying. They have these like cloth masks where you can barely see a human face beneath it. It's great.
I don't like this.
Yeah, they're fun. Anyway, then we have the first judge. I'm doing these out of order. Apologies. AKA number 46. He's this little guy. His name is Jack LeWhite. He was an English character actor. And then we have a third judge, aka number 56, who is Lucy Griffiths, who's this English character actress who was in things like Sherlock Holmes and Frankenstein, and who would later be recast for another role in The Village. So we'll have more to talk about when it comes to Lucy Griffiths later.
Cool.
So they have this sequence of back and forth where they're asking all these questions, and number 6 is giving all of these very stereotype of an abstract artist answers, right?
Right.
How do you read this scene, Brendan?
Very sardonically.
Yes.
This is him. I think, he going back to him playing chess with the general.
Mm-hmm.
There's a degree to which the general, and I think probably the rest of the village, probably view number 6 as the neighbor that you really don't want to run into.
Totally.
Because the degree of contempt that he is capable of keeping on these people is so inescapable that I have to imagine that everyone realizes, like, okay, I've got to put up with this guy because that's what number 2 says I have to do. But I'll be damned if I'm gonna like him. It's like, and it's entertaining. It's very funny for him to be like, yes, this means freedom, information. It's a portal or a barrier, depending on how you look at it. And it's like,
right.
All right, I guess I'll pretend it's not a fucking boat, but like,
yeah. See, this is what I'm saying. Like, I feel like everybody else in that room knows it's a boat, but
sure.
But number 2 has been like, everybody, you have to play along. Because not directly, but by reacting to it. He calls it our very own Epstein, which is a wild thing to hear in the year of our Lord 2024.
Now there's another reading here, which is that everyone is just doing this instinctually because that is their defense mechanism for existing within the village.
Sure.
This thing that I was talking about before of like, no one is quite sure when they are being played at any given point in time or what the role of the other person is. Yeah. All 3 of these people on the judging committee might very well be like, well, number 6 is very clearly working for number 2. They hang out and have breakfast all the time. So
they're boyfriends.
So I clearly have to like play along with whatever is going on here in order to make sure I don't get disintegrated or something like that.
The reference, in case anybody else was confused, was to Jacob Epstein, who was this American-British sculptor who did a lot of like abstract sculptural work. Cool stuff.
Anything we would know?
No, it's fun stuff, but it never got like huge. I think outside of like the 50s and 60s.
I'll say this: one of the first results kind of looks like what I would think a Cyberman looks like.
Oh, makes you think.
Here, I'm gonna send you this.
Please
see what this is called.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Torso and metal from the rock drill.
Kind of looks like that one robot from Mystery Science Theater.
Oh, Crow T Robot?
Yeah. Looks like Crow.
It kind of looks like General Grievous.
Oh, it does kind of look like General Grievous.
It kind of looks like a pregnant General Grievous.
Well, all right. Let's not get into fan fiction.
All right.
Okay, so he wins the competition, right?
He does. He wins.
He wins. It's so silly.
They have age brackets for the competition.
Yes.
I don't know why, because there's not children in the village.
Well,
there's like 60 and up category.
Well, you could think about that's why they don't have a lower bracket.
I guess.
Though,
do you think they later have? No, never mind. Go ahead.
I'm just gonna say, just to hint, in case somebody's yelling at us because they've seen The Prisoner before, we will later see some kids, but not for a long time. Anyway, this is Hilda Berry, who is fantastic as number 38. She's this British character actress. She's all dressed up. She's done a tapestry of number 2, which, if you know anything about tapestry, this is wildly impressive that she supposedly did this. It's so big.
And it's him as like Henry VIII or something like that.
Yes. And she's just so adorable. Just this great grandma who like accepts her prize. And then they announce number 6 wins. And number 6, gets all these work units, basically money for winning. And it's like, oh, no. I think that number 38 and her tapestry should have won. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to buy it from her to hang in my own home. It's so funny.
Here's the thing. He's playing again. When he's not being like deeply sardonic, he is capable of operating in this mode that is like, yeah, he's just part of the system now. He's part of the village.
Yes.
Which I think lends credence to the general's argument of like, yeah, you should just do this all the time. We all also do it. You should just do it. Yes. And it's perfectly, it is completely within the realm of imagination that totally. He would want to have a tapestry of number 2 hanging in his home.
It's the imagination of the other villagers, right?
Yeah, it's like Paulie of The Sopranos having a picture of Tony up at his wall. It's like, yeah, of course, that's my buddy. That's my boyfriend up there. Why wouldn't I want a picture of him on the wall, dressed up like Henry VIII? That's great.
It's true.
And everyone's like, yeah, that's great. Way to go.
Everybody applauds. They love this.
I wish I had the money for it.
Yeah.
But he's not going to hang it up.
So they escape, right?
They do. They use it as a sail. They assemble the art into the boat.
They do this clever thing where they wrap like a tarpaulin, like a waterproof tarpaulin, around the boat, which explains why there were like these holes in it, right?
Yeah, that's pretty good.
And they sail away. The escape here is weird. On a first time watch, you were probably watching this and going, "This is weird."
Yeah,
because nobody's. Yeah, go ahead.
They're watching them escape. Like number 2 and number 28 are just watching them get away.
Yeah, they don't really seem all that perturbed. We get this interesting bit where they say that, they're gonna they have them on post 5. Like post 5 is observing them, whereas post 14 in the last episode, which is interesting.
Right.
Yep. And then they call out Rover, so we're expecting it to be similar to Nadia's last escape.
They call out Rover at the point where they have seemingly almost made it to where they're going.
Yes.
So they're still capable of observing them at a distance of like 30 miles or something like that.
Yeah, which is interesting because he was saying that at some point they'd only be on radar.
Right.
And the boat can't get closer, right? There's like a drift coming off the rocks, and so they end up having to swim for it.
Yep.
We get our Polish connection of Nadia here.
Yeah.
Who is, we only know as Carol or Carl. It's Karel. I don't even know if they say his name in the episode.
I don't think so, but I think it's just pronounced Carol.
Probably. This is David Arlen, who again was in Doctor Who and played other like spies and one-off roles for TV series. And he shoots at Rover with a rifle.
He shoots him so many times.
It's so funny.
Number 2 is in on it. Other people are in on it. Rover is not in on it. Poor Rover is just trying to do his job and is getting shot for probably the first time in his life.
I can't believe number 2 is doing this to his dog. It's so mean.
Yeah.
Anyway, Rover eventually backs off. It doesn't seem to have harmed Rover. It just seems like I can't do this anymore. I'm done.
You can see bullet hole decals on the thing, but the weather balloon is not popping. Whatever. No. Like, this is one of the first times where I was really like, dang, Rover is kind of cool. Where it just gets shot over and over again. It just gets mad and keeps going.
Yeah, it's great. He's like the Terminator. What if the Terminator was just a big white ball? It's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so we should probably zoom in a little bit on this sequence where they get out of the water. They put them. Carl gives them some towels, or Carol puts them in some towels. Carol supposedly can't speak English except when he does later. Number 6 is mostly using Nadia to communicate, and in short order, number 6 asks for a pen and paper, or pencil and paper, so he can write down a message,
coded message, send to London.
Yep. Carol already has a crate ready for them.
Yeah, it was not only like watching and waiting for them to get there, but has everything that they need to get to London.
Right. And we've never seen Nadia or number 6 communicate to this guy previously. And yet somehow he's ready for them.
Yeah.
Which, like...
Weird.
Yeah. And you can imagine lots of explanations here, right? You could imagine Nadia having been like, oh, actually other people have escaped from the village and this is like a known route, right? It's like an underground railroad sort of thing.
Or even an aside, like I sent a message before I got sent here,
right.
Or I managed to get a message out.
Right.
And gesturing again at some of the stuff that I mentioned before, it's very easy to imagine that there was a scene where that happened and you just didn't see it for whatever reason.
Totally.
It's like there was just a gap in the storytelling. So there's some question marks here, but maybe not so much that you might think the entire jig is up.
We also just got a big, action sequence, right? So there's like, some extent of this being sort of plastered over. Anyway, they're gonna go into these crates, or into this crate. They'll be like sealed up, but before they do, number 6 gives the coded message to Carol, says to send it. He says he won't understand it, and then asks Carol for his watch
because his has been destroyed in the seawater.
Right. Well, it's the Baltic seawater supposedly, which is really interesting. We'll get to it. Maybe we should just talk about it now. Do you think that if he doesn't get the watch here, that this works?
I think it might. And I think I chalk part of that up to the acting that McGoohan does between now and the end.
Right.
Because they get sent by mail.
It's incredible.
From, theoretically, the edge of Poland
Mhm.
to a Polish distribution center
Yes.
to Copenhagen and then to London.
Right. By plane.
And he is using the watch in particular to make sure that he has a sense of where they are because he can't see out of
the crate.
thing.
Yeah, they can only
he's
hear.
just judging. Yeah, judge like, oh, okay, we're probably on a plane right now.
Mhm.
We've landed. We're probably in Copenhagen, et cetera, et cetera. And so he's using the watch
Mhm.
to determine, like, okay, where are we?
Yes.
And all the while, he is like groggy.
Yes.
He's increasingly less and less interested in the flirtations of Nadia, who's trying to get like, so are you married? Do you have a girlfriend? Big Ben, I love you.
Big Ben, I'm a bit happier now that I know you don't have a wife.
And yeah, and he's like, he's had this harrowing journey, and he's like so out of it by the time that he gets out of the box that you can see like, oh, he's been through an ordeal. He might be about ready to like
to reveal it,
give up. Yeah.
Let's talk about this montage sequence a little bit. Do you think this montage is real? And by that I mean we're getting all this stock photo of like crates being loaded onto ships and planes. Do you think that we're supposed to expect that they really did ship them all this way? Or is this like a simulation and this is like what number 6 thinks is happening out there?
Here's what I think. I think if they had some sort of a device that could simulate being on a plane but not actually being on a plane, then they would not have been able to resist the allure of showing it to us.
Sure, that's
which
fair.
I think means that they don't have
They
that.
really did ship
So they
them.
must have had to have actually shipped them, even if they just went in a big circle.
Because, well, they definitely went in a big circle.
Which is, I guess they could have just gone straight back from where they were. Which, again, we said this in the summary, but they do not get back to London.
No. Even if they think they do. There is a moment where I think we see London partway through this, which is that Father Inge gets a phone call.
Oh, yes. Okay.
So Father Inge is this sort of bespectacled, older, balding British actor. He is played by...
To be clear, that's a one whole word. That's his last name, Father Inge.
Yes, Fortheringay, Father Inge. Played by Richard Wattis, who was mostly an English comedic actor. But here's the really important thing. In season 1 of Danger Man, he's Drake's superior.
Oh.
So people who were big Danger Man fans would have seen him and immediately have gone, why, that's Drake's superior officer. This is the guy who gives Drake's his orders.
Right. And again, we are watching The Prisoner in isolation. Everyone that was watching The Prisoner would have been like, oh, well, this is just a continuation of Drake where they're not calling him Drake.
Right. They do change the name, so he's Hardy in Danger Man, but there's lots of reasons you can imagine that. Anyway, I should also note real quick, Father Inge has a weird last name. It immediately sounds like something to do with being a homosexual. And wouldn't you know it, the rumors about it after his death that Roger Wattis was actually closeted. So I just thought that was interesting. And as a comedic actor, I wonder to what extent like he had a hand in naming himself for this episode. Yeah. Anyway, so he gets a message, a phone call, which we as first-time viewers are supposed to think, oh, this is him hearing about number 6's coded message.
Right. Yes.
But actually, there's no reason for this scene to happen unless it's a coded message from the village.
Right.
Telling him to come from London. Yeah.
Yeah, he's told after the fact, you better get back to London before...
anybody notices you're gone.
Yeah, before you get any embarrassing questions.
Yeah. So I think that's really interesting. Like, we do see the real version of The Office first before we see the fake version of The Office.
Yeah,
of course, it's the same set, but it's
Yeah.
just fun. Okay, so they get out of the crate. It's really funny. They have like a couple people doing like Cockney accents and like messing around with the crate. It says fragile on it, but they're treating it really roughly.
Yeah.
And they bring it to Father Inge's office. There's some like soldier men. Father Inge immediately takes Nadia out, leaving number 6.
Takes her to a different room. Not
Yeah,
puts a bullet in
sorry.
her head.
Yeah. And we're left with this other new character who's referred to as Colonel J. This is Kevin Stoney, who was in Doctor Who a bunch, Avengers, who was in I, Claudius, lots of stuff. He's great. White hair, mustachioed, has a voice kind of like this. And he was supposedly, or presumably, I guess I should say, number 6's like direct superior or of some sort. And immediately starts questioning him, right? Says, "You've been gone for months."
Wait.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Before you talk about what he does, I have a connection that you don't have.
Oh?
I was not introduced to the world of British super spies through John Drake on Danger Man, nor from James Bond. I discovered this world through Danger Mouse.
Oh, of course, yeah. No, I love Danger Mouse.
The world's greatest secret agent.
Wait, is Kevin Stoney in Danger Mouse?
No, but Danger Mouse's boss is called Colonel K.
Oh, nice.
Uh-huh.
That's good.
In his younger days, Colonel K became the first person to climb Everest on a pogo stick.
Hell yeah, dude.
This from the Danger Mouse fandom wiki.
Thank you, Danger Mouse.
Much more about Danger Mouse as I remember it.
He had like a mole second command. Anyway, okay, so there's this back and forth. He at first seems extremely reasonable with his concerns. Colonel J, I mean. He says, "You've been gone for months. You say from the other side of the Iron Curtain," right?
Uh-huh.
So it sounds like he just went over to the other side because he like just disappears after resigning suddenly.
Right. And shows up in the company of this Estonian woman.
Right.
In a crate.
In a crate. And so number 6 buys that this is suspicious, right? And seems willing to cut a deal, right? That he'll answer all of the Colonel's questions as long as he can guarantee sort of safety for Nadia. And
it should be said, not completely conciliatorily.
Right.
He says, "I risked my life and hers to come back here,
right,
because I thought it was different. Isn't it? Isn't it different?"
Yeah, that's good.
Different from the other, from the Soviets, presumably.
Yes, or even from the village.
Sure. And at this time, he's explaining, "Yes, I was at the village. You must know what the village is, right? If not that one, you have one of your own."
Yes.
Colonel J is continuing to say, "No, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm going to get answers out of you. I'll give you protection. I'll give her protection. But first, you must tell me, why did you resign in the first place?"
Yes. Okay, so there's this really interesting bit. He says it's a matter of conscience, right? And then he starts saying the actual reason. He says, "I resigned for a very long time." And that's when the chimes hit, when the times hit, right?
That's right. The Chimes of Big Ben.
The Chimes of Big Ben, assumably. Except he looks down at his watch. It shows the same time. Because, of course, what has happened here is that the watch that, this guy who works for the village had was just for the village's time zone. And they're still in the village's time zone.
Right. And he realizes this.
Yep. He traces. It's hilarious. As soon as he starts to realize this, Colonel J just goes quiet.
Yep.
And prior to this, he's like browbeating him. He's like yelling at him, basically. And he goes completely quiet while he watches number 6 follow some electrical lines, unplug something. All the sounds of the London streets immediately stop. And he finds the tape recorder in the closet.
Yep.
And he just walks out.
Opens the door, and there the village is.
He's in fact just across the street from the what's the building called? The community center.
Yep.
Hilarious.
Everyone, Nadia included, basically gathers on the steps to see what he will do. None of them say anything. They're just sort of caught in the act and shamefacedly observing.
Yes. He says
simply,
"Yes.
Go ahead.
Be seeing you."
And just calmly goes home.
Yes. He snaps to open the door. I don't know if you caught that.
Oh, he does. That's right. The door to his house.
It's as if he's going like, "Okay, you got me, but I'm going to still exude some, control over my situation."
Do you know what it reminds me of?
What?
It's the Hanna-Barbera cartoon where the wolf and the dog are fighting each other. And then I think it's a wolf and a dog. It might be it's not a coyote, but it's like it's a dog and some wild animal.
Sure.
And then the end of day whistle blows, and they both start talking amicably as they punch
sure.
out.
Yeah.
They're like, nice try today, George.
Yeah.
Hope I didn't rough you up too much. No worries, Bill. See you tomorrow. Where it's just sort of like, all right, yep, you got me again today. I'll see you next time.
Maybe I read a bit more despondence in number 6 here.
Sure. Yeah.
I think he really thought, like, the only reason why this almost works is because he really thought he was getting out.
I wonder if maybe that calmness is not from gamesmanship, but is more from exhaustion in that case.
Totally.
Because again, he really did just go on some kind of journey just there. He went through an escape attempt, a fight for his life, and then was on some kind of journey in a box for 10 hours or something like that.
Yeah.
So it could be he just doesn't have the energy to fight back at that point.
Totally. But I do think that we should read these next few episodes under the lens of the end of this one, in terms of like, where is number 6? Production order notwithstanding, and all these things. I do think there's interesting things that come from that. But we kind of moved past it. But before we go too much further, I do want to talk briefly about the reveal we get here, which is that number 6 had been considering resigning for a very long time.
I wonder if that's the case. I think all we get is the line specifically is because for a very long time.
Right. ... Right. Before he trails off.
Certainly, it seems as though he has been considering something for a very long time, and that doesn't describe whether or not he's been observing something that he doesn't agree with, or he's been doing things that he doesn't agree with.
Sure.
It could be that he's been thinking about resigning for a very long time, but it could just as easily be there's been some sort of growing disquiet in him about what it is that he's doing, or something that other people are doing that he's enabling.
Totally.
And so on and so forth.
Totally. But I think even with that reading, this recolors the village and the number 2's like quests in a really interesting way, right?
Right.
Because number 2, previous episode 1, number 2, the first one, and Leo McKern, number 2, have both gestured at them wanting number 6, right? They want him to come over. And to that extent, it feels less like the resignation was the precipitating event of the series, and more like that's an excuse.
Yes.
Like they wanted him the whole time, and they're just using that as like, oh, this is our way in.
I think
we have a reason to grab him now.
Yeah, I think likewise you have to consider what it means that you have these two people who number 6 had every reason to think are trustworthy in so much as he can bargain with them for his safety from his previous life, that are evidently part of the system of the village. Both.
But notably,
go ahead.
They're not, like, the entire security apparatus is not, right?
Yes.
Because otherwise, why would Fotheringay have to worry about being sent back, making it back in time?
Right. So this is not just an arm of the British security system that number 6 doesn't know about. This is something else above and beyond.
Yes, we get the clearest scene with Fotheringay talking to number 2 here, right? Outside of the view of number 6, apparently this isn't a ploy, at least not for number 6, that no, the village is not controlled by the British government. This is some other side here.
Right.
There's one more scene, which I think is worth gesturing at,
Please.
Which is the final bit here as number 8 in this great fur coat is about to leave. It's the exact same steps from which Cobb in episode 1 left, right? So there's the sense here of like, this is the escape. This is how you get out of the village.
Right.
And she's saying, it was a good plan to number 2, and that she'll stress that in her report.
Right. Who's she reporting to?
Right? It's this really interesting, and it's also further this, like, number 2 is not, like, Nadia is not in charge. Nadia is not number 1, I feel pretty confident in saying. Otherwise, who's she reporting to?
Yeah.
But number 2 is not even one step below number 1.
No.
Or whoever else, right?
If anything, this number 2 is responsible for this part of the project, not the project overall.
Right. And they brought Nadia in, who
apparently is either equal to number 2 or his superior even,
Mm-hmm.
as like, okay, she can do this, she can play this part, right? Which we could see by the end she definitely did. Like, she did a good job of, being Nadia by the end. She's very naturalistic.
It got McGoohan exactly where he needed to be.
Yep. If they didn't just dang give that Polish man a Polish watch, if they'd only done that, they would have had him.
Damn you, Big Bill.
There's one other thing to note here in the alternate version of this. There's an ending.
Yes.
Yeah, the ending. So this was as part of like the event we gestured at in episode 1, where McGoohan did a weird interview.
Yeah, it was this press event that they did. It was sort of like, showing off the first couple episodes for the press.
Right.
McGoohan showed up in a martial arts uniform. There were a couple of others actors there. Angelo Buscat was also there.
Yes.
McGoohan eventually changed into some normal clothes and then changed into the cowboy outfit that we'll talk about at some point.
Yep.
Sat inside of a cage and gave nonsense answers to questions for a little while.
Yes. But this cut of the episode has this ending in which, so what we do currently, right, is we have like the end credits. There's the image of Patrick McGoohan's face. The bars come in. Then there's the end credits. We have the penny farthing bicycle, right? But in this version, it fades out, and the two wheels of the bicycle become like the Earth and the sun.
Yes. And then the Earth takes the center. I'm sorry, you describe it. You've probably got it on screen.
I don't actually, though I easily can, because guess what? Everybody could watch the alternative version on YouTube.
Whoa.
Yeah, I know. It's just on there. I watched it. It's the film, the coloring, rather, I should say, is a lot worse in the alternate version. But
it's the Earth and a galaxy of some kind.
Yeah, the galaxy, not the sun. Sorry.
The galaxy takes up the screen, and then the Earth zooms in.
Yep. And then
in front of the Earth, pop.
Yeah.
As in the word pop.
The word pop. Now, reportedly, this was part of a broader, like, planned thing in the series, which was going to coincide also with, like, the use of Pop Goes the Weasel.
Right. We've already seen that show up in the show.
And which will finally be sort of resolved near the end of the series.
Yeah.
So we'll get to it more later, but it's a funny thing for them to have originally considered and to have later decided, no, we're not actually going to use this for the broadcast.
Yeah, I have to wonder if they decided against it just from scope reasons, or because they didn't have like a consistent plan for it, or the number of episodes that they were actually going to make was such a moving target.
Sure. I mean, it could also say that it just doesn't look very good.
Sure, there's that. There's also the question of, like, did people actually watch through the very end of the credits back then? I don't know. Sure. A lot of people don't watch through the end of the credits now.
It's true. Yeah, so that's the big episode, the big points of the episode.
That's the episode. It's a good one.
It's a really good one. Yeah, I'm just going back through my notes to see if there was anything major I otherwise wanted to talk about, but I think we hit it, all the big parts.
Let's see if I've got anything. I don't see anything. I think it's time for number one with a bullet. Your standout performance, scene, or just facet of the village from this episode. What's your favorite thing from Chimes of Big Ben?
Yeah, I think I'm going to do a little bit of a trend. And I'm going to continue from episode 1 and picking a sort of bit character who steals a scene. And I'm going to go with Kevin Stoney as Colonel J.
Oh, excellent.
I mean, he's there for, I don't know, like 3 or 4 minutes or something. But he completely sells you on, yes, I am some sort of high-ranking member of British security apparatus, right? And like, until it starts going off the rails, he has very believable concerns that he sells very believably.
Yeah. In a way, I kind of wish we got more of this.
Totally.
Because this works to a degree that this works extraordinarily well.
It even kind of works like his desperation of like hammering in on the why did you resign, right? Like clearly his superiors have said that's what you have to get out of him, right?
Yeah. and it more than maybe anything about the transportation sequence gives the impression that yes, number 6 has done it and has made it back to
Totally.
civilization.
Yeah, so I got to give it to him.
Because this is what a superior in that position would probably say.
Yeah. How about you?
There is a moment in the very first scene when he's waking up.
Mm.
He's making his breakfast. Number 2 is watching him on the screen.
Mm.
There is a jaunty tune from a big band playing from his speaker.
Mm-hmm.
The speaker that he had smashed apart in the first episode and got it immediately repaired. He picks it up off the shelf and he puts it in his miniature fridge so he doesn't have to listen to the music.
It's very good.
And his boyfriend goes, "That's great.
I love this.
I love that he did that." Is this music?
I'm not going to let our kids. I'm not going to let our kids listen to fridge music.
I'm going to refrigerate this.
Yeah, it's a really good scene.
It's good.
I don't know who came up with this, right? I don't know if it was the original scriptwriter or if this was in changes. I don't know if like Patrick McGoohan just did this on set. But it's such a great moment that communicates so much about like how done he is, but also how like resigned he is.
You see, I read it very differently. I think of it as him coming up with unorthodox solutions to simple problems.
Sure. But it's part of like the blasé nature of it, I think.
Sure.
Like this is not the first time he has considered doing this.
Right. Yes, that's a good point. He's resigned to the fact that he cannot ultimately get rid of the music.
Exactly.
But he has discovered that he can work around it and then later on in the episode use it to his own devices.
Right.
Use it for his own purposes.
Oh, and we didn't really mention it, but while we're talking about the writing, Vincent Tilsey was best known for what we would now call like prestige TV, like character-focused serials. So there's this thing called the Foresight Saga that he was big on, but also political thrillers. So he had this series called The Guardians about sort of an alternate universe Great Britain, which was like controlled by fascists. And I think you can see both.
Imagine what that would be like.
Hey. But I think you can see both modes of that at play in this episode, right? You have the kind of like soap opera-esque interactions with Nadia and number 6, which turn into more, personal grounded interactions as it goes on. But you also get these like political thriller vibes, right? Of like all the machinations of the village staff.
I happen to know that Vincent wrote that, or Vincent, like he's my buddy. I happen to know that Vincent Tilsey wrote that bit where he puts the speaker in the fridge.
Oh, great.
Because I listened to the writer commentary for the episode.
Oh, nice.
Which does not tell me anything about his thought process or why he wrote it the way that he wrote it.
Awesome.
But it does tell you, I wrote that. Or what he thinks, which is very often. That's good.
It is good. Yeah, it's great. Love that.
In his defense, he was recording it maybe 40 years after he had written it. So
damn. Yeah, that's tough.
Yeah.
It's also very funny. I don't know if it's going to come up in the recording, but my cat Vincent is yelling at me to be fed while we're recording this.
Don't worry, Vincent. We're almost done.
We're so close, Vincent.
I think all we have to do is rate this show.
Yeah, let's rate this dang thing.
What do you rate this show?
I'm very high on this episode, as I think you are too. I'm going to rate it 29 out of 30 miles to the Polish border.
Wow. That's close enough to swim.
It is, yeah, definitely close enough if you're a bronze medal Olympic swimmer.
I likewise really like this episode. I think far more of it works than doesn't work. I think it does a lot, again, that is good about The Prisoner. If I was going to show anyone a single episode of The Prisoner, it would probably be this one.
Yeah.
And in fact, I wish it had come later in the series because I think it stands out so well. Although I really like the next episode as well. I'm going to rate this 23 out of 24 work units, which is how much you need to spend to get non-alcoholic whiskey in the village.
Nice. We just started talking about it more, and I think we should at least mention it here. This is our third woman character, third named woman character, and all three have been trying to trick number 6 in some way.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's other ladies around. We got, our grandma with her tapestry.
And there's not many friendly guys in that way. Like,
Sure.
there's friendly guys, but they are mostly working against number 6.
Sure, but not in the same way of like pretending to be damsels in distress, right?
Yes, that is a good point.
And obviously number 9 from episode 1 does this unwillingly, but this is a clear trend. And that's interesting to see how this trend will continue or not as we get to our next episode, which is A, B, and C, which notably features some really strong performances by some lady actresses. Goodness Christ.
If I was going to show someone one episode of The Prisoner, it would probably be this one. If I was going to show them 2, A, B, and C might be the other one.
Yeah, we'll revisit that question. I think it's a really good question to revisit as we go through.
If I was going to show someone 3 episodes,
I
don't know what I'd do.
I mean, the next 3 are so strong.
They're good.
I don't know if they're part of the original 7 that were planned.
I don't know, and I'm not going to look it up until we record our next episode.
Good idea. Until then, should we do our outros?
Sure. Where can people find you, Matthew?
I do apologize that Vincent's screaming. You're probably going to have to do some cutting.
I wrote the episode.
I
wrote it
in the background.
I wrote the episode.
It's
good.
You can find me on Twitter at Matthew Guzdial, Matthew Guz, G-U-Z or G-U-Z if you're of the Canadian persuasion. Hey, Brendan, where can they find you online?
You can find me at _Sulcata on Twitter.
And that's it. Not on Instagram, despite what we said earlier.
You know what?
Cannot find him on Instagram.
You can find pictures that I do on Instagram. I take pictures every now and then at _Sulcata. I was briefly struck dumb because I realized I live in a world where I might have to tell people how to find me on Blue Sky.
Oof, yeah, I know.
And I'm not at _Sulcata on Blue Sky, but also I don't think I'm going to post anything on Blue Sky except things that you're going to find me do at other places. So I'm not going to plug Blue Sky.
Yeah. We also both have itch.io, so you can find games that we've made, sometimes even together.
Devin Nelson made our theme music. Find it and more at devindecibel.bandcamp.com. Cy Sweetman made our cover art. Find his work at Cy F. Sweetman. Anywhere fine artwork is sold. Anywhere.
So without further ado, Brendan, I'll be seeing you.
Not if I see you first.